Welcome back to Croft. We're looking forward to race 6 or round 6 for the Touring Car Trophy and TCR UK. We have the grid already set and the cars are going to be coming out in just a few moments. If you glance over the pit wall right now, you'll be able to see them currently in their pits. They'll be heading around just a few moments. Now, we caught up with Andy McEwan a little bit earlier on. That's our race commentator. We were talking through some of the drivers and some of the teams to see how they were performing. And the big story from race 1 here today, round 5 of TCT, the Dunlop Touring Car Trophy, featuring the class of touring car, the TCR UK. It was Lewis Kent, the winner, his first ever race win. Something he's promised that he was going to do, particularly last year and looking into this season, where he seems to have a different head on his shoulders in 2019. And last time out at Donington Park, he almost took that race win. But alas, a fuel issue, not enough of it. That being the issue meant that he didn't win the race, but he did come in onto the podium. So here he's going to be starting first place on the grid. Let's take a little walk onto the grid. The cars are going to be coming, so we can't go too close. You can see number 1 down here. This is where he's going to be. And Lewis will be starting from that position just there, but with a very heavy car. He's got a lot of weight going into that car there. Second on the grid, Henry Neal. We spoke to him earlier on as well. He's in the NGTC car of his dad's, in fact, the one his dad drove in the British Touring Car, and it's a very, very quick car. And when you have a look at that Honda out on track, just when you see it in the race, keep an eye on how little it rolls. It's so flat through all of the corners. Very, very impressive sight. If we swing the camera around for a second, you should be able to see to your left-hand side a little bit of open circuit, but the cars are now heading out onto the grid, or just about to head out onto the grid. So if we look down there right now, you see just how far they are away from us. As Williams just gets out in his car too. Not sure if Richard Woods has made it out. We'll see that in just a few moments. He's destined to start 6th in this race. So there you see the cars now coming out onto the grid. They're going to do their first formation lap. Some of them may go back through the pits. They're allowed to do 2 formation runs here, or warm-up laps, before they go through onto the grid itself, and then they'll see a tyre change from the team. So you see Lewis Kent actually there now. My grid might be a little bit wrong because he's currently coming out in 4th, but that should reform as he gets onto the grid. Looks like we have a full complement of cars. Yes, Richard Woods is out there. So you see leading the way in a really beautiful looking Golf is Sonny Wong. Behind him, Henry Neal at the moment in that Civic, the Type R. The only rear-wheel drive car of them all is that of Alex Day in the Audi. And then we have Lewis Kent in the Hyundai i30N, a very, very impressive car. When you look at WTCR and the other series that the Hyundai features in, very, very impressive. And then way at the back there, weaving along as he goes, is James Turkington. Now, we're talking about some of the drivers here. They've got really, really well-known names. Henry Neal, dad, of course, being Matt Neal from British Touring Car, triple champion British Touring Car. We've got James Turkington, brother being Colin Turkington, another triple British Touring Car champion. So touring car racing is something these guys know very, very well. And they're going to come down to the grid in just a few moments and form up on here. And then we've got this very small matter of the race plus a lap. And Andy McEwan's going to talk us all through it. When it comes to the races, though, anything can happen and often does happen. And as we know, when it comes to touring car racing, the final race of the day is where they all decide to leave their brains in their garages. So we should see what happens very, very soon. If we take a glance now at the grid, you see the teams all awaiting, and some very happy faces too, all awaiting their respective drivers. So 23 minutes plus 1 lap. That's what this race is going to be. It'll run around about 24.5 minutes, something like that. If we have a look here at the Essex and Kent Motorsport team, they've got this pneumatic tank, or this tank of gas, and they're going to pump the car up on the jacks using pneumatic jacks. All these cars have that. It's a 3-jack system. It means they don't need to lift it in any other way. There's no actual lifting of the car. They plug it into where you'd normally refuel your car. They change the position for it for these cars, and up it goes onto its jacks. Sonny Wong right at the back there, such a long way down the grid. Henry Neal moving in to the left-hand side in the NGTC Honda Civic Type R. We have 1 car going through the grid, 2 cars going through the paddock, actually, going through the pits even. If I get the right word, that would help, wouldn't it? It's Alex Day. So here comes, have a look at Lewis Kent now. So it's going to go up onto its jacks. Here's the pneumatic jacks. There you go. And they're going to change the tyres front to back, left to right as well. So he scrubs some heat into the front and then switch it to the other side, and that's to get heat throughout all the tyres as they go out for 1 more formation lap before the start of the race. 3 of the cars have gone through the pits, deciding to get a bit more heat. So let's take a little bit of a wander. Can't go too far in a minute before all the cars are on the grid because I don't really want to get run over, and camera crew are quite expensive to replace, so we don't want to lose any of our team. Henry Neal, We see him sitting in the car in position right now. We had a word with him earlier on, as we saw, and he is very, very confident and has got a nice bit of open track ahead of him, same as he had in the last race, but he just needs to make sure he gets his right foot down off the launch. Then we go to James Turkington. Now, James Turkington here has taken to this car like a duck to water. He really has got to grips with it, and he had some fourth places before this, but he's had his first podiums since he moved over to the TCR UK car. And he's looking pretty quick. And where he is on the grid, if you just flip it around at the minute, you see Henry Neal down here, Lewis Kent ahead of him, directly ahead of him on track. So he's going to be looking as best he can to make a jump on Lewis Kent, if possible, who's got that slightly heavier car. Spin it back round again. And we look to the next part of the grid, which is Alex Day, Earl Wilson, Richard Woods and Sonny Wong at the very back of the grid, just there in the Volkswagen Golf TCR. A beautiful looking car out on track. That thing really does sparkle. So here comes Alex Day into position. Just watch him for a moment as he gets into place. Earl Wilson's going to come in onto the right-hand side, directly in front of Sonny Wong and directly behind James Turkington. So Alex Day, the only driver in a rear-wheel drive car. Very good around Croft. Into position he goes, and then you'll see them put a marker onto the wall, and this will be where the drivers now use to park up after their formation lap. So let's go a little bit further down, and we'll go to the very back of the grid, and I'll get to have a look at how far up the road they have to go before they meet their other cars. So here we go, Earl Wilson. We've seen him performing really well. They had some changes to the car, so remember after FP1 they get some great times. Into qualifying they changed the setup, trying to make some improvements to their time, and alas, that didn't work, and they ended up going backwards. But they've gone back to their original race setup now, original FP1 setup, so that thing should shift a little bit more. And a quick word from the team. I just want to find out whether they got new rubber. Did you manage to put new rubber on the car? Yeah. They got new rubber for this race. There you go. So confirmation, new rubber. We didn't see that in the first race. So we got new rubber. So that thing should be shifting a little bit. Then we've got Richard Woods there. New to this race series, but looks like he's got a fair bit of pace. And as we turn around, we've got TCR China winner, the champion of TCR China here. You see Sonny Wong, and he's got a long way to go. If we bring the camera all the way back here, turn it around, have a look how far down the track they've got to go. Have a look down there. It's quite a long bit of road he's got to get all the way up to Lewis Kent, but that Sonny will try. He's got the ability, and he's got a decent car underneath him. So it's about time for them to get onto their formation lap and, well, hopefully bring some drama. Andy, over to you.
Thanks, Bryn. Well, Croft, 12 months ago or so, gave us lots of drama. It proved to be a pivotal round of the TCR UK Championship, where the round at which the wheels very much came off Dan Lloyd's mid-season assault on the championship, win after win after win. Then he came here to Croft and things didn't go to plan, got his one and only non-finish of the year in race 2. In the end, it didn't completely derail his championship challenge, but it did enough to take it to the very last round. In this race, we could see another change of championship lead. In race number 1, James Turkington, by virtue of finishing second place in TCR UK, moved into the points lead ahead of the absent Carl Swift. In this race, Lewis Kent could potentially do the same thing to James Turkington. By our reckoning, there are 5 points in it between James Turkington, who's on 65 points, and Lewis Kent, who is on 60 points. Lewis took maximum points out of race 1, won the race, that's worth 25 points, and started from pole position as well, which is worth 5 points. You don't score points based on your grid position for race 2, because this grid is based on the result from the previous race. So you've already had your reward of 25 points for winning the race. As part of that reward, though, Lewis Kent also gets 60 kilos of success ballast on board the car, and he was showing me it's literally sat right in the passenger seat, and it is quite literally like having an average-sized passenger sat alongside you for the duration of the race. Interestingly, though, he was saying that actually it doesn't really seem to bother him too much, and it doesn't actually affect the car in the places you might expect it to. He said under braking, for example, you maybe have to brake 1 or 2 metres earlier, but it's not that noticeable. The worst thing is straight line speed. It affects your straight line speed because it affects your acceleration out of the tight corners, and particularly along that pit straight, that may well be where the Hyundai is weaker, because you're accelerating out of a first gear left-hander, one of the slowest corners in British motorsport, in fact, the hairpin, and then you've got to go right the way up through the gears into at least 5th gear before you hit Clervaux. and that acceleration into a headwind as well, as we've documented, that may be where the weight really hurts, and of course it doesn't help you much off the line. He will therefore be quite happy to know that it's Henry Neal alongside him, and Henry, by his own admission, cannot get that car off the line to save his life at the moment. For whatever reason, he is really struggling to launch off the line, and almost every race this year has lost ground on the run into the first corner. He said to me that was so that he could make the races more exciting. I don't believe him, but it certainly does make the races more exciting, because Henry, as we know, has good racecraft, and that car seems to look after its tyres pretty well. It was one of the fastest cars in the second half of the previous race. James Turkington then lines up third in the first of the green cars, the green and white Cupra. We've got 5 different makes of car, though, in the top 5 positions on the grid. Hyundai, Honda, Cupra, Audi and Vauxhall, with the VW Sonny Wong at the back of the grid. As the engines switch on and the cars are about, once the grid is cleared, to head out onto their green flag lap. Lewis Kent, having got his first victory, can he now double up? It's not going to be easy to do. I spoke to him in the paddock just before the just during our little break earlier on, and he said that his mindset coming into this race was that yes, he'd like to win it, but that is maybe a little unlikely. It's the first time they've ever run this car with maximum weight this year, at least. However, the car remarkably is still lighter than it was at any point last year, because of the way the balance performance has been worked out this year. So in theory he might have a chance of staying at the front, but it won't be easy. He said if they're all over him and they're assaulting him left, right and centre, he does not want to risk damaging the car, does not want to risk ending up off the road. And so he said whilst he's not going to wave them through, he certainly won't be hanging on to the death to this race lead. Nonetheless, if there is a chance of a race victory, he will go for it. So the 19-year-old, one of 2 19-year-olds on the grid. I was corrected, but our commentary notes, I believe, have a slight error in them. Alex Day, who, according to the notes that we've got, is 20 years old, is not. And he was at great pains to remind me of the fact that he is only 19. He's the same age as Lewis. They went to school not far away from each other as well, apparently, down in Essex. And Lewis Kent and Alex Day, therefore, jointly the youngest drivers on the grid. And there is Alex in the red and grey Audi A4, which he said is, what was going on there with Sonny Wong? That looked as if, well, I don't know what that looked like, but I think he's spun on the green flag, right? Yes, he has. Now, weirdly, usually you'd put that down to cold rear tyres, but that was an odd way to do it. Either way, he's got going again, and I sincerely hope there's nothing wrong with that car, but Sonny Wong with a quick rotation there on the green flag lap, and the rear tyre temperature definitely won't be at the optimal range just yet, and it is surprisingly easy to do that with a short wheelbase front wheel drive car, and it's always very embarrassing when you do so, but Sonny will, I'm sure, move on from that fairly quickly and work extra hard over the remainder of this lap to get some rear tyre temperature up. Right, let's run you through the grid then. Lewis Kent, it is on pole position. The grid based upon the result from our previous race. So it's Kent on pole with Henry Neal alongside him. A TCR and a TCT car sharing the front row of the grid. Remember, it is only the TCR cars that score points, and they score points within their own class. So James Turkington, who lines up third, was second home in TCR UK in the previous race, so scores second place points. Alongside him will be the rear wheel drive car of Alex Day. Now, Alex went from 5th on the grid in race 1 to 2nd into the first corner. Now he starts 1 position higher. Can he get 1 position higher into the lead, into the first corner? If he can, we'll have a real race on our hands, I think. He's got Darrell Wilson in the green DW Racing Vauxhall Astra alongside. Then Richard Woods in the Maximum Motorsport prepared Cupra, and Sonny Wong, hopefully with some rear tyre temperature now, in 7th place on the grid. That is how they line up ahead of the second race of the day for TCR UK Championship and the Dunlop Tyres Touring Car Trophy. And very shortly the cars will be making their way around onto the grid. There they go. Lewis Kent looking then for his 2nd career victory in TCR machinery. It's not going to be easy to do. The start will be absolutely vital. Keep an eye to the grey and red Audi, 4th on the grid. Rear-wheel drive advantage off the line. Alex said that he surprised even himself with how good his start was in the previous race. If he can get another similar getaway, he could lead into the first corner. 23 minutes plus 1 lap of racing. Round number 6 of the TCR UK Championship for 2019 about to burst into life. Lewis Kent and Henry Neal share the front row of the grid. Lights go on, they go out now. It's a good start made by both of the front row starters. Look out for Alex Day, he's already into third place as well. Sonny Wong is on the grass further back trying to make progress, but it will be Kent that leads the way. Alex Day trying to go around the outside, they're three abreast. Oh, I don't believe it, the Audi slows again. Is that a return of the misfire, I wonder? Turkington into second, Neil third, and Alex Day, after a mega start, is pulling out of the way again. Now we know that if he resets everything, it usually fixes itself, but the damage has been done, and he's dropped right to the back of the field. So Kent out in front. Turkington, crucially, has leapfrogged Henry Neil and can set off maybe after Lewis Kent. If they finish in this order, if Kent wins TCR again and Turkington is second, Lewis will be the championship leader. So for Turkington to hang on, he needs to get ahead of that orange and white Hyundai as quickly as possible. Oh, there's Alex Day. Now this time it looks... Oh, no, it's not terminal. He has... potentially got the car fired back up. It's going to be a struggle. He will need a safety car now at bare minimum to get back into this. So Kent through to Sonny in, leads the way. Look at the battle going on between Sonny Wong and Darrell Wilson there for fourth position, third in TCR as they turn through the double apex right-hander. Finally Alex Day has got the car going, hopefully back at speed, but look at the time he's lost. He's over half a lap now behind the rest of the pack, which makes its way down into the complex at the end of the lap. And Sonny Wong there with a really good start from 7th on the grid. I caught a glimpse of him in the background going down the right-hand side of the pit straight. 2 wheels on the grass, but when you get a good launch, you've got to find a gap in the traffic somewhere, and that is what Sonny did. And he made some really good progress. So Kent leads the way. Turkington second. Remember that James is about 16 kilos lighter than Lewis Kent. Oh, and Alex Day's day, if you see what I mean, is very much done. I think that car pulling off at the side of the road, and unfortunately he is an early retirement. That's a real shame. One of the cars we thought might be able to challenge for the race victory, bare minimum a podium. And back to the point I was making there, so Lewis Kent's car has become 60 kilos heavier after. Now we're interrupted again because Sonny Wong is now slowing. Is he down the back straight? Was that the VW going a little slowly, pulled over to the side of the road? Is he still there? And yes, but he's dropped back a little bit, maybe missed gear there for the Golf, and drops into the clutches of Richard Woods, who is trying his best here to come through from the very back of the grid. Yeah, I think it must have just been a missed gear or something, but the Golf certainly slowed down. Alex Day jogs across the road to a place of safety down at Tower Corner, and he is therefore confirmed as our first retirement. So, try again. Lewis Kent, 60 kilos heavier than he was in the previous race. That will maybe affect the way they've had to set that car up, whereas James Turkington and Henry Neil are carrying exactly the same success ballast that they were for the first race. So whatever setup they had in race 1, they've only had to tweak it very slightly maybe to improve it for race number 2, whereas Lewis, you would imagine that car has had to go through a fairly wholesale change. He was saying they have to change some of the suspension settings and the ride height settings to make sure that that is all as well balanced as it can be. But whether or not he'll be able to go as quickly as those two in this race awaits to be seen. Right now he cannot, and James Turkington, looking for a victory here if possible, is closing in with a new fastest lap of the race. Can he find a way through into the race lead then here? Hasn't won a race yet outright in TCR UK, has James Turkington. Starred at Donington Park, of course, but it was Max Coates in a TCT spec car that took both overall race victories. So James Turkington looking for his first outright win here. And these are the top two in the TCR UK Championship. So this is, I think, going to be a really interesting battle. That extra weight on the Hyundai may well mean that Lewis Kent's tyres drop off a little quicker as well. So if James Turkington can just bide his time, this race might well drop into his hands anyway. Although James was saying, actually, that contrary to what we were saying in race 1, about how he anticipated that car would look after its tyres well and come on strong in the second half of the race, he said he really pushed too hard in the early stages, trying to go after Alex Day and Lewis Kent in front of him, and that left him with no tyre life in the final third of the race. This time around, I wonder, is he maybe going to take things a bit easier? Well, he's on the tail of Lewis Kent now, so he could maybe afford to sit there for a lap or two. Doesn't necessarily need to make his move straight away. Now, there are yellow flags there at the complex. Does that mean we're getting a safety car? I think we might be. And if we are, it will be because of Alex Day's car. Yes, they're slowing down. They're weaving around. The safety car being scrambled. Disaster, this, for James Turkington, really, because he had built up a couple of seconds of cushion over Henry Neil behind him. And that gap now disappears. So Kent and Turkington, the top two, will be caught by Henry behind. As we've said, though, that won't necessarily affect James and Lewis's points haul because Henry's running in a different class. But if he starts getting in between these two, it limits the opportunity that James might have to attack Lewis for the race lead, and therefore the more important class lead. So this could well change the dynamic of the race slightly. Darrell Wilson in 4th place, by the way, having a strong run in this one. Darrell started 5th, and as we heard from Bryn on the grid, has fresh tyres on that DW Racing Astra for this race, so may well be that he is looking to try and make hay whilst the sun very much does shine, and whilst those tyres are fresh. That's the reason for our safety car, by the way. Alex Day's car, whilst it is on the inside of the corner, it was still a bit close to the circuit for the clerk of the course's liking, so the safety car has been scrambled. I reckon we might get away with just one lap here, because there is a cut through on the exit of Tower that leads you straight back to the final corner, and I reckon they can pull the Audi through there and maybe get it out of the way before this lap is over. Of course, they have to give the safety car time to switch the lights off and give everybody warning, though, so it may be that we just run out of time for a restart this time around. We shall see. The safety car leads them through the sunny complex, and the remaining cars will punch themselves ever further together. Yeah, I think we may have just missed the opportunity for a restart on this occasion. The lights are still on. The Audi still being recovered. Oh no, they go out, so that was a late call, but we are going to go racing again this time. That's good news. So we'll have about, just under 16.5 minutes of racing, plus 1 lap still to go. And Lewis Kent now has a safety car restart to negotiate from the head of the field. And he's gone early, which is interesting, and it seems to have worked, because James Turkington, I think, was caught napping a little bit there, hasn't been able to quite go with him. Henry Neal, though, very much latched onto the rear bumper of Turkington, so I think we've got a real race on our hands now, with Lewis Kent, the heaviest car out there, at the head of the field, and 2 of his big rivals breathing down his neck. Across the line they go. Sonny Wong looks racy as well, try and find a way past Darrell Wilson for 4th position overall, 3rd in TCR. Over the curbs then, the top 5 cars go. Again, we have these 5 different brands represented in the top 5 positions. And it is at the moment the Hyundai i30N of Lewis Kent that heads the way, but can he maintain this? It's going to take some real doing. But we know he's a strong defensive driver, and the longer he lasts out in front, the less likely he's going to be to let the ball through. Is that a puncture on Henry Neal? It is! Henry Neal locks up and goes straight on into the gravel trap. I do not believe it. Henry Neal, that looks like it was a front left puncture as he came onto the brakes into Tower Corner, and that is odd because it's early in the race and I haven't seen him have any contact with anybody. But Henry Neal, unfortunately, out of the race now, and that frees up James Turkington, excuse me, to go into full attack mode now. He doesn't need to worry about defending from the cars behind. He can simply focus on challenging Lewis Kent for the race leader. It means we've now got no TCT cars left either, so it's all TCR UK. And we're going to have another safety car, yes, unfortunately, because of Henry Neal's car off in the gravel. The safety car is scrambled again, so you sort of see that one coming, but I'm intrigued to know what caused that, because we're early in the race, so it can't be a wear-related puncture. I don't think he's had any contact with anybody else, so it's unlikely that it was contact-related. Therefore, a curb strike, maybe. Now, if you whack the curbs too hard in the early stages, then that can sometimes come back to bite you. But again, we'd only been racing for, well, not even 10 minutes really, because we had that lap behind the safety car. I think we're going to try and dig out a replay of that, see if we can pick out exactly what happened. It looked like it was the front left corner that went down. Either that or a suspension failure. Let's have a look then. So the replay coming up, and third car in line. The lockup begins early on, and is that tyre down or is that a suspension failure? It didn't look actually like the tyre. I've no idea. I've no idea what happened there, but I'm less certain now that it was a puncture. I think that may well have been suspension that's gone. We spoke earlier on about the curbs and how the suspension and the drive shafts all take a real beating around here. There's a lot of lap time that can be found from using those curbs. But of course the mechanical components don't particularly like it. They're not designed to be hammered over curbs endlessly, so it may be that was one curb strike too many. Either way, he's out of the race, we know that, and that's a shame for Henry because he still hasn't won a race this year. He's won some TCT races but hasn't had an overall win. Nor have James Turkington or Darrell Wilson, who are second and third, or Sonny Wong. In fact, the only person left out there now who's had an overall race win is Lewis Kent, the race leader. So if he doesn't manage to hang on, we're guaranteed a new winner. Oh, no, I think that front left tyre is now down, isn't it? Just looking, peering underneath. The car will head back to the pit lane, and perhaps Bryn can have do a little digging and see what he can find. But it does now actually look a bit more like it is a front left puncture. Not sure we're quite going to get the same late call for a restart this time, so we're probably going to get 2 laps behind the pace car. All of this, of course, has its effect on tyre wear and tyre strategy, because the less racing laps we get, the less punishment those tyres will take, and that may well mean that we don't get this sort of certain cars running out of tyres towards the end of the race. Certainly will help Lewis Kent, because that extra weight will have, you would imagine, increased his tyre wear. I think I was hearing in my ears then, I think, confirmation that it was a front left puncture for Henry Neal, so thank you for whoever found that out. And that was not the end to his race that he was hoping for, but unfortunately what's been a promising season for Henry, and has actually delivered relatively little. Had that non-finish at Alton Park when he was dicing for the victory with Ollie Taylor. Came home to second place in race 2, and then Donington Park was sort of there or thereabouts, but that is a bit more of a horsepower circuit, and Alex Day and Henry Neal discussed what could have been after their races are over early. But yeah, the Donington Park, I think, is a horsepower circuit, maybe suited the TCR cars a little better. The TCR cars run with more brake horsepower than the NGTC cars, but the NGTC cars have slightly bigger brakes, slightly more grip mid-corner as well, so it all evens out. And there is a balanced performance between the 2 classes, so it was always intended that the TCR cars would be able to race the non-TCR cars. And that has been the case on multiple occasions so far this year, but now we are left for the first time this year with simply a TCR UK race. 5 cars left, they're all running in TCR UK. And so now every position on track is worth championship points. We don't have to worry about different classes mixing themselves together. And I'll remind you that if things finish as they are now, Lewis Kent will, and I can barely believe I'm saying this, after he didn't even race at Alton Park, remember, after an electrical issue put him out before qualifying, and had a non-finish at Donington, so he'd only actually finished 1 race before this weekend, but that was enough in the end for him to, well, potentially come out of Croft as the championship leader. But James Turkington is going to give him a real workover here, I think, over the remaining 10 minutes plus 1 lap of racing, because the safety car is coming in this time. Lewis Kent, James Turkington, Darrell Wilson, Sonny Wong and Richard Woods, your order, as the TCR cars turn through the final complex of corners and head towards the restart. Now it looks like Lewis Kent's gone quite early again. He's in danger of catching the safety car when he does this, but this time James Turkington was wise to it and has very much gone with him. So Turkington looking to try and attack as soon as he can here to get this lead away. Across the start finish line they go then. The gap between the 2 of them less than half a second as they rush towards Clervaux corner once again, and Lewis Kent will now have to defend like his life depends on it for the final 10 minutes. Darrell Wilson runs a bit wide there, but Sonny Wong in the end wasn't quite close enough to get up the inside. Much improved pace this weekend from Sonny compared with what we saw at Alton Park at the start of the season. And of course he didn't race at Donington because he was out racing at the Nürburgring 24 hours. So considering he's not seen this circuit before and he hasn't raced the car for a little while, this is actually really good pace that he's showing to be up there mixing it for a podium, but against drivers who have been driving these cars now for well over a full season. Certainly in the shape of Darrell Wilson and Lewis Kent anyway. Through the S's again, Turkington challenging Lewis Kent then in the tow down to Barcroft corner. Lewis using all the curb, of course he is. Uses every bit of racetrack available to him, does Lewis, to try and get the maximum performance out of that Hyundai. Clobbers the curbs through Sonny out. He's really having to push hard there, but it frustratingly doesn't seem to be working. James Turkington, despite not having to take so many risks, is still, it would seem, able to stay with him in his wheel tracks in second place. Up towards the end of another lap though, James may be able to stay with him, but he's not really close enough to attack, and I guess as long as Lewis Kent keeps James at arm's length, then it doesn't really matter if it's only a half a second winning margin, it will still be a win. And as long as James doesn't get close enough to have a lunge, there may be a possibility that Lewis could hang on to this. Across the line they go again. They're starting to pull away now from Wilson and Wong behind. There they are, 3rd and 4th, and Richard Wood's not quite able to go with them either in 5th. I wonder if he's got some sort of an issue. They were working on the car over our break between the races. May well be that he's got some sort of a problem with the car that unfortunately is hampering his performance. We know the car is quick, but Richard's still very much getting used to it. Across the line, or down the back straight I should say, they go again, and James Turkington looming large now in the mirrors of Lewis Kent, the race leader. James, we believe, is here for the full season now as well, as we know is Lewis, so this could be our championship battle that we're looking at here between the 2 of them. James, of course, didn't compete in TCR UK in the first round. He was a TCT entrant in a Seat Leon Supercopa, and so that's why actually essentially neither of these drivers competed at the opening round. That's why their points tally is still fairly equal. Darrell Wilson nowhere near the apex there through either part of Sonny, but actually still confusingly gapped Sonny Wong behind him. Back up to the end of the lap again then. What can Turkington do? What will Turkington do? Is he going to just sit there and take second? I find that hard to believe, but with these safety cars we've had now, he can't really afford to hang around here. Obviously it's taken a fair few laps of racing away from us, but it also means that if he's just waiting and biding his time and waiting for the tyre situation to turn in his favour, that might not happen actually. Lewis has really been working on, that's one of the big things he worked on over the winter, is tyre management, something he was criticised for a little last year, but you know, he is a young up-and-coming driver. He learns every time he goes out there and does a splendid job of improving his craft at every race meeting, does Lewis Kent. And managing your tyres is very much a big part of that. And if he can do that over the remaining 7 minutes or so, he might be a double race winner in TCR UK. But the team, I'm sure, with the luck they've had this year, will not be counting any chickens just yet. But we've had a few laps now since the restart, and James Turkington, whilst he seems able to match Lewis, doesn't really seem able to go any quicker, and certainly doesn't seem to be able to get within striking range. Kent will have all four wheels on the grass at Barcroft by the end of the race. I think he's taking more and more liberties with track limits every time we see him. We need to keep an eye on track limits as well. We've seen some track limits penalties handed out this weekend already in some of the support races. We need to be careful that none of these drivers pick up penalties for using a bit too much of the circuit limits. So into the hairpin again. Fastest lap, by the way, belongs to James Turkington in this race at the moment. And that was a 1:24.473. Henry Neal set the fastest lap in the first race, a 23.8, but Lewis Kent actually now steals it back, a 1:24.239. So that is impressive, actually. The gap goes out to just under 0.6 of a second now. It was a personal best for all three of the top three cars, though. And Turkington, yeah, not quite as quick, albeit he was only about 15 thousandths of a second slower than Kent, but that effort would have been enough for the fastest lap had Lewis not gone fractionally quicker just before him. Where is Sonny Wong? Sonny Wong has now disappeared, has he not? I couldn't see him then in the background in the Golf, and the tyres at Clairvaux are all in the middle of the road. I wonder if the two things are linked. I suspect they might be, because that's where Sonny Wong has stopped. Now, I can't see any damage to the front of the car. That doesn't mean there isn't any on the right-hand side, though. Let's have a look. Well, the car looks immaculate, actually, but the Sonny clearly doesn't feel that it is, and I think has probably given those tyres a whack, and that won't do the suspension or the steering any good. So Sonny Wong, unfortunately, we add to the list of retirements, but still the race goes on at the head of the field between Lewis Kent and James Turkington. Gap coming down, I'd say, on this lap. See whether or not James is able to nick another fastest lap out of this race. It certainly looks like he's quicker than Lewis on this occasion. Is this the tyre situation starting to turn? Has it just been a particularly good lap for James Turkington? I wonder. Let's have a look at the lap times then. Across the line they go. Lewis Kent is indeed actually still fractionally quicker, would you believe, by about half a tenth. In that last sector, the Hyundai does seem fairly strong, despite the weight it's carrying, and that really is the sector in which it should struggle. But they've run this car with a lot of weight anyway. Last year it was really hampered by the balance performance, the international, the worldwide TCR balance performance measures that were that it was having to conform to. And so it's actually still lighter now than it was at any point last year. Despite the fact it's carrying 60 kilos more than it was in race one, it's still not as heavy as it was at any point last year. So they've got used to sort of setting this car up around a very heavy base weight, and it looks as though they've learned how to make it tick, because Lewis Kent is now getting away, most definitely, from James Turkington. It looks like there's a particularly big push on this lap as well from Lewis, as he tries now to build up the margin over Turkington in second. Wilson still third, with Richard Woods now running in fourth position. There is Darrell Wilson in the background. He's not been able to live with these two, though, unfortunately. Shame we lost Alex Day and Henry Neal early on too. That would have been intriguing to see how they fitted into this battle. The Audi in particular, good on its tyres. But they'll be back next time, both of them as well. Both of those two confirmed for a full season of TCT racing as well. And they'll be very much looking forward to Brands Hatch, I'm sure, which is Lewis Kent's home circuit, and a circuit that he's done thousands of laps around. So he's actually confident that he can carry on winning races at Brands Hatch next time out, despite the fact that he's once again potentially going to arrive there fully laden with success ballast. But he said actually at Brands Hatch, even more so than Croft, he is confident the ballast won't slow him down. And that's ominous for everybody else, because he's going to take some real beating. The gap now out to 1.1 seconds then, as we go on to our 13th lap of the race. Now in race 1 we got 18 laps in, but of course we had no safety cars in that race. Darrell Wilson goes through his fastest lap of the race so far, 1:25.855, which is about 3 or 4 tenths slower than he went in the previous race, despite the new tyres that he's on. Worked that one out, but possibly they've made some tweaks to the setup that haven't quite worked, but he's looking good for a podium. He hasn't had too many of those in the past, Darrell Wilson. So, granted, he will have benefited slightly from other people's misfortune, but he's been running solidly in the top 3 or 4 all weekend long, really. And the DW racing car is finding some good pace now in the middle part of the season. Turns his way through the complex. Proper little racing cars, these TCR cars as well. The lap times that they're setting around here are right on a par with things like the BTCC, and the cars for a fraction of the cost can be raced in 30 odd different championships around the world, so they're very worthwhile investment to make. One can only hope that the TCR UK Championship continues to grow and grow and we get more and more of these cars out there, because I think there's no doubt about it, the racing this weekend has once again proven that there is life yet in the TCR UK formula. I think we just need a few more of them out there. Either way, it looks like Lewis Kent is destined now for a second race victory. Like buses, when you wait what seems like forever for one, a second one seems to be just around the corner, and that is the case for Lewis here, it would appear, with a lap and a half to go now. In fact, no, he'll probably squeeze 2 more laps in after this one, because the time will not likely have elapsed completely by the time he gets back to the start-finish line. Look at the way that he's raced away from James Turkington now. James Turkington not able to stay with him. Again, maybe just took too much out of the tyres in the early stages, but some solid points nonetheless. If things finish as they are now, then Lewis Kent will take 25 points by my reckoning, which will put him on to 85 points total. James Turkington will score 18 points for second place, which will put him on to 83. So there will be 2 points in it heading to Donington Park. And don't forget, there are only 2 more rounds left after this weekend. 2 races at Brands Hatch, sorry, not Donington Park, Brands Hatch next, and then the finale at Donington Park quite late in the season, actually, in October, at the traditional BRSCC finals weekend. But when you bear in mind that Lewis Kent has been driving this car now for a year and a half, James Turkington in his 4th ever race in TCR machinery, I think by the end of the season, James will probably be every bit the match for Lewis, and we could actually have really quite an interesting championship battle developing between these two. There is the Cupra, the maximum, the Sicily Racing prepared Cupra, in fact. Alex Day and Henry Neal are watching on, chatting away, and Alex unfortunately was not quite able to get the car fired back up again after its latest mechanical issue, and right off the start as well, made a brilliant start, and sadly before the car had even reached the first corner it had lost power, lost drive. It loses power steering as well, apparently he was saying, but it switches off like that. So Alex, not the biggest of chaps, has to really wrestle that car through the corners anyway, even with the assistance of power steering. When he loses it, it's all the harder to get it to turn through the corners. Lewis Kent's car, though, handling beautifully and seems to be really well suited to this Croft circuit. He's got the measure of James Turkington now. I think we're about to go on to the final lap of the race. And Lewis Kent now well out of reach. I don't think there's anything James Turkington can do about him here. The gap over 2 seconds now. 2.8 seconds, in fact, as we go on to our final lap of the race. Darrell Wilson a further 7.6 back. Richard Woods, by the way, best lap for him in this race, 1:20. In fact, he's just done a personal best, 1:25.5, a couple of laps ago, in fact, and that is fractionally quicker than he went in the first race earlier on. So Richard Woods getting quicker as well as he gets more and more to grips with that car. Lewis Kent, though, heading through the Jim Clark S's, is now less than half a lap away from his second TCR UK win of the season. I have to wonder what could have been had the car been out at Oulton Park as planned. maybe he could have got a win or two there, and Donington Park looks set for at least one race victory, maybe two. But Lewis has had to wait until the middle part of the season to get his first victory, and now the second one incoming, because he turns through the penultimate corner into the final hairpin. Lewis Kent is going to take the victory in round number 6 of the TCR UK Championship, and with it, the championship lead. He flashes the lights and he wins here at Croft in the second race of the weekend. Second place goes the way of James Turkington, and he will lose that points lead that he managed to steal in the first race of the weekend. And he'll be a little disappointed with that, but I think, thinking about the long game, he should be able to challenge Lewis for more victories as the season goes on. Of course, the BOP may change as well as we go through the remaining couple of rounds, just to, if it is believed that the Hyundai has an advantage, it may be pegged back a little bit. It certainly helps keep the level of competition nice and close. And Lewis Kent, I'm sure, will be arguing strongly against that happening, but it may be that Turkington doesn't really need any outside help. He will get quicker as the year goes on, I'm convinced of it. And the car is being run by the ultra-professional Sicily Motorsport Squad, who run cars in the BTCC, multiple race winning team, in fact, in the British Touring Car Championship. Will we one day see James Turkington in there, or will he maybe pursue the TCR career route, which is possibly the more attractive option? Lewis Kent then takes the victory by 3.9 seconds. James Turkington in second, Darrell Wilson third, and Richard Woods in fourth. Sonny Wong, unfortunately, a non-finisher, so too Henry Neal. And Alex Day, basically a non-starter. He did take the start and challenged for the lead into the first corner before the car unfortunately ran out of power and was out of the race. So that is your result then from round number 6 of the championship. With it, Lewis Kent takes the points lead in TCR UK from James Turkington in second. Sonny Wong, meanwhile, will lose out now to Darrell Wilson, I'm pretty sure. Yes, he will. In fact, Darrell scored a few more points than him in the previous race after Wong's non-finish. It's a double non-finish, sadly, for Sonny, despite the fact he probably had podium pace in both races, certainly in this one. But whatever happened to him up at the first part of the circuit, sadly, put him out of the race. So into the final corner they come. Lewis Kent then will be a very, very happy race winner once again. And he will be greeted momentarily by Bryn Lucas down in the pit lane. And Lewis taking his time about bringing the cars back to the pit lane. Wonder what James Turkington will say. Did he run out of tyres, or did he simply not have the pace to live with Lewis Kent this weekend? No one really has. Lewis was on pole position by a fair margin in yesterday's qualifying session. Took pole position by 3.5, just over 3.5 tenths. Which, in a field that is as competitive as this, that actually is a fair margin of pole position advantage. There is Lewis beaming away, as often he is. Even when things are going as wrong as they can, Lewis seems to have a smile on his face. I suppose that's the advantage of youth, isn't it? The optimism of youth. But he gets the congratulations from his dad, Warren. Grandfather David, I'm sure... that wasn't Warren. In fact, Warren, I'm sure, will be there, though. Always on hand. Chief mechanic of the team as well. And his grandfather David as well, a fierce supporter of Lewis's career. Stuart Lyons there, on hand to hand over the winner's caps. There's David Cleal. Nice moment there between two very different generations of the family. But Lewis Kent is a double winner here at Croft in the TCR UK Championship. He takes the points lead and will head to Brands Hatch, looking to further extend that if he can. Well, let's head down and speak to our double race winner, Lewis Kent.
Okay, let's go and get some words from some of these drivers then from that TCR race. Bit of a car killer, wasn't it, here at Croft? I'm going to go straight down to third place, though. Is Darrell around? No, he's actually still in the car. Let's see if we can get hold of him. We might have to come back to Darrell. Let's go straight to the race winner then. Change of order. Let's go straight over to our race winner, Lewis Kent. So, Lewis, well, what do we say now? Double TCR UK race winner.
Yeah. Perfect weekend, really. So, no, really pleased with it. Car felt brilliant. We knew we wouldn't struggle too much with the weight. We had it last year, so it wasn't too much of a phase for me. I just knew I had to get out there, try and hold everyone off and try and break a gap. Not too sure what happened to James. He was on me and then looked back and he wasn't there. But, no, really happy to have the second win. Can't thank everyone enough again. And no, hopefully we can carry it on to Brands.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a strange one because James was right on you, like you say, and then I don't know whether it was just a war of attrition out there. We'll get some words from James in just a bit and find out. But so you're pretty happy with your day's work. It's been something that is a long time coming, and 2 race wins now. So we've got 4 more races this season in TCR UK. What are we going to get from you?
Hopefully the same. Hopefully we can have another couple of perfect weekends. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to Brands, home track. Been around there a million times, love it. So no, it was where I had my first ever TCR podium last year. So if we can carry on the pace we've got, we should be fine. But we've got some competition now, and you can see that coming through. So yeah, as long as we can keep our heads down, we'll be all right.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a strange one because Croft has destroyed a few cars this weekend. Not sure what happened to Mr. Neil out there, Henry. It looked like it was either a flat tyre or maybe something wrong with a prop shaft or something. We just don't know.
I'm not too sure because after the safety car the first time, went into there, I felt a little bit of understeer. And I had my dad come across the radio and say, oh, we think there might be oil down. I said, oh, that's weird. Henry's gone off. I felt a bit of understeer. So I'm not too sure if Alex dropped something as he came around there, but I'm not too sure. He did it last year as well. It killed a couple of cars, including mine. But yeah, it's a great track. I love the track. So no, really happy with the performance of the car and really happy with how we did.
And you love the top step. Well done.
Yeah, thank you very much.
There we go. Double race winner, Lewis Kent. It's been a while actually in the making, that one, because if you think about it, you know, he's been pushing a fair bit. Talking about pushing a fair bit, James Turkington, you were pushing a fair bit there with Lewis, but you couldn't quite get on him.
Yeah, we were able to catch him through the tight stuff. It's just down the straight, he just had the legs on us. So yeah, delighted to come away with another podium.
Yeah, it's now getting to be a very good habit. I mean, you had fourth before then you got into this thing, or fourth, you got into this thing, then you start to climb up a bit more, and you're having podiums coming out your ears now.
Yeah, we've had 2/3 and a second, so yeah, roll on Brands, looking forward to it.
Yeah, now when it comes to Brands, talking to Lewis, he says his home circuit, he knows it really well, he's raced there all the time. Yourself?
I've raced there maybe twice in the Mini, so haven't done as many laps as Lewis, but yeah, we'll go with lots of confidence after this weekend.
You've got to be brave, haven't you, with that one?
Yeah, you have. Chuck it in.
Well done, another podium, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
There's James Turkington. Now let's go and speak to this man here. Let's speak to Darrell, because Darrell has not had all the luck over the season and a bit we've had of TCR UK, but you finally got your podium.
Yeah, finally got the podium. Yeah, we've just been working on the car all weekend, and we had a bad qualifying, got quicker in practice, and a race one didn't go down to plan. But yeah, we just got quicker and quicker, and yeah, I'm not quite there yet, but yeah, I can give them a run for the money for the first couple of laps anyway.
Now, I was talking to your dad about the setup of the car. So in FP1, you had one setup. In qualifying, you went slightly the wrong direction. You actually went backwards a time, and then you put it back to the FP1 setup for race one, but we're on old rubber. And I said to your dad just before the race, is that new or old? And he went, new rubber, and it seemed to help.
Yeah, new rubber, that's the key of it. You got to keep them for a new rubber at it. I've done it and the time come down now, so really I just need to practice on new rubber and get the little fun adjustments.
Yeah, it's amazing stuff. So podium for you, well done. Not a bad day's work for Croft.
No, we had a pole, we had a first place with Josh too, the car I run in the VW Cup, and he had a fourth too, so yeah, it's been a good weekend.
Happy days, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
There you go, top 3 from the Touring Car Trophy and TCR UK. In fact, looking at it, the top 3 from the TCT, the Dunlop Touring Car Trophy, were all TCR UK cars. The NGTC cars not faring so well. Alex Day not managing to make it all the way around. Maybe a recurrence of the problem we had before. And Henry Neal, who knows what happened to that car? I'm sure we'll find out at some stage. That's it for us for right now, but we're going to be back on track in just a few minutes. In fact, glancing just over the back there, I see the next race. It is not far off of starting. It's the BRSCC Mazda MX-5 Super Cup. So to talk us through the build-up and the race, once again, let's hand over to our race commentator, Andy McEwan.
Mazda MX-5 Super Cup action about to get underway for the final time this weekend. The partially reversed grid race 3 and a championship battle